Stop looking, take it off. The rancher paused, then acted Wild West stories. Its rays cut through the morning mist, casting a golden light over the rolling fields of Samuel Harlow's ranch. Samuel, a man in his early 40s, had spent nearly all his life here. His hands were strong and calloused from years of tending cattle, mending fences, and working the land from dawn to dusk. Life on the ranch was never easy, but Samuel knew its rhythms as well as he knew his own reflection in the water troughs. He walked along the dusty trail that led from the main house to the far end of his property. His wide-brimmed hat shaded his eyes, but he could feel the heat already rising from the ground beneath his boots. The air smelled of dry grass, earth, and the faint, sweet scent of wildflowers scattered among the hills. The ranch was alive with sound, the lowing of cows in the distance, the occasional neigh of a horse, and the steady hum of insects. Samuel enjoyed these moments of quiet. They reminded him of why he had chosen this life, away from crowded towns and noisy streets, where a man's worth was measured by his strength, courage, and honesty. As he approached the fence line, Samuel's eyes caught a movement near the edge of the property. He squinted, trying to make out what it was. At first, he thought it might be one of his cattle wandering too close to the trees, but then he saw a figure walking steadily toward him. The man moved with a strange rhythm, almost hesitant, as if he didn't belong in this open, wild land. Samuel felt a flicker of unease. He had seen many travelers pass through over the years, merchants, cowhands, and drifters, but something about this one was different. Samuel slowed his pace, keeping his distance but observing closely. He could see the stranger more clearly now. He was wearing a long coat that hung loosely from his shoulders, slightly worn and dusty from travel. The man's hat was pulled low over his face, hiding most of his features, but Samuel could sense a tension in the way he held himself. His hands were hidden beneath the coat, and every now and then he would glance around nervously as if expecting someone, or something, to appear out of nowhere. Samuel's instincts were telling him to be careful. He had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving in the Wild West. A man could seem harmless while carrying a secret or a weapon. Samuel had faced dangerous situations before, but each one had taught him the importance of patience, observation, and the right timing. He didn't rush into confrontations. Instead, he watched, letting the other person reveal themselves before making a move. The stranger stopped for a moment, glancing directly at Samuel. Their eyes met briefly, and in that instant, Samuel felt a jolt of awareness. There was something unusual in the man's gaze, an urgency, a hint of fear or maybe defiance. Samuel could not be sure. He remained still, leaning slightly against the fence post, his posture relaxed but ready. He knew that in these moments, the smallest action or gesture could change everything. Time seemed to stretch as the stranger took another step forward. The wind whispered through the tall grasses, carrying a faint rustle of leaves from the nearby trees. Samuel could hear his own heartbeat in his chest, steady but alert. He studied the stranger carefully, noting every detail: the worn boots caked with dirt, the frayed cuffs of the coat, the tense shoulders, and the subtle way the hands shifted under the fabric. Samuel had seen many men try to hide things before, and he knew that something was concealed beneath that long coat. For a few tense moments, neither spoke. The ranch, usually calm and peaceful at this hour, felt heavy with anticipation. Samuel's cattle continued grazing, unaware of the silent drama unfolding at the edge of the field. Birds called from the distant trees, their songs a reminder that life went on even in moments of tension. Samuel's mind raced through possibilities. Was the man lost? Or was he here with some hidden purpose? Samuel had learned that quick judgments could be dangerous. One had to watch, to listen, and to understand the intentions before acting. The stranger shifted his weight, glancing over his shoulder as if checking for someone following him. Samuel noticed the small movements, the subtle signs of anxiety. He didn't need to speak yet. Observation was his first tool. Years on the ranch had taught him patience, the ability to wait for the right moment. He remembered the lessons his father had taught him long ago. Always watch the land, and always watch the men who come across it. The plains speak in ways most men ignore. Samuel trusted that lesson now more than ever. As the stranger continued to move closer, Samuel's curiosity grew alongside his caution. There was something about this man's presence that felt urgent, almost desperate. Samuel's eyes narrowed slightly as he noted the glint of something beneath the folds of the coat, a metallic reflection that caught the morning sunlight for just a second. His heart did not race with fear. Instead, it focused with clarity. He recognized the sign immediately. There was something concealed, something potentially dangerous. Samuel took a deep breath, feeling the dry air fill his lungs. He kept his hands free, relaxed, but ready to act if needed. He had handled cattle that could stampede without warning, horses that could bolt at the slightest sound, and men who thought threats could be solved with a gun. In each case, calm observation and careful timing had been his greatest allies. He knew that rushing into action without understanding the situation could lead to disaster. The stranger's step slowed as he approached a small rise in the field. Samuel stayed where he was, leaning lightly on the fence, his eyes never leaving the man. He noticed the subtle shift in posture, the tension in the shoulders, and the quick glance around that betrayed a nervous mind. There was no sudden move yet, but Samuel felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The plains were silent now, holding their breath alongside the rancher. Finally, the stranger stopped, just out of reach of Samuel's ranch gate. He raised his head slightly, revealing a worn but sharp face, marked by travel and worry. "Hello," he said cautiously, his voice low and uncertain. Samuel did not respond immediately. He kept watching, waiting for the man to make the next move. There was no rush. The rancher had learned long ago that the Wild West rewarded those who could wait, who could read the land and the people as carefully as they read the skies. The stranger shifted again, this time pulling his coat tighter around his body. Samuel noticed the faint glimmer of metal again, hidden beneath the folds. The realization settled in quietly, like a shadow stretching across the plains. This was no ordinary traveler or lost drifter. There was a purpose here, and Samuel needed to understand it before it became a problem. He adjusted his stance, keeping one hand free while the other rested lightly near his side. Patience, observation, and readiness, his three guiding principles, were all in play now. Minutes passed, the tension thickening in the warm morning air. Samuel could feel the subtle shift in the stranger's energy, a restless anticipation. He did not speak, did not move, but his presence alone seemed to influence the man. The stranger's eyes darted around, and finally he let out a small, almost inaudible sigh. Samuel could sense the hesitation, the internal conflict. Something was about to happen, and Samuel was ready to face it. He had spent years preparing for moments like this, moments when calm observation and quiet courage could prevent disaster. He remembered his father's words again. In the West, a man's patience can save his life more often than his gun. Watch first. Act second. Samuel knew that the plains were alive with more than just cattle and wind. They held secrets, dangers, and unexpected visitors. And today, one of those visitors had arrived at the edge of his land. The stranger finally took another step forward, and Samuel's mind raced, planning the possible outcomes. Every detail he had observed, the nervous movements, the metallic glint, the anxious glances, fed into a clear understanding. This man carried something dangerous, something that could threaten the peace of the ranch if handled carelessly. Samuel's pulse remained steady, his eyes sharp. He had paused for reason, and now he would wait for the perfect moment to act. The wind picked up, carrying dust and faint sounds of the distant cattle. Samuel stood silently, a figure of quiet strength and readiness. He knew that today's encounter could change everything, but he also knew the first step was always to observe, to understand, and to prepare. The stranger remained frozen in place for a moment, and Samuel could sense the hesitation. The plains were vast, the sun was high, and the day was just beginning. But in these quiet, tense moments, the story of what was to come had already begun. The stranger shifted his weight nervously, and Samuel noticed the subtle change immediately. It was the kind of movement that spoke louder than words, a silent admission that something was wrong. Samuel's sharp eyes followed every twitch, every glance over the shoulder. The man's coat, worn and dusty from travel, hid something heavy beneath it. A faint glint of metal caught the sunlight again, and Samuel's instincts screamed that this was no ordinary visitor. He remained calm, keeping his posture relaxed but ready, letting the stranger make the next move. The plains were quiet now, unusually quiet. The distant lowing of the cattle seemed muted, as if even they were sensing the tension in the air. A few birds took flight from the nearby trees, their wings cutting the morning sky in sudden bursts. Samuel's gaze never left the stranger. He had faced trouble before on these open lands, outlaws, desperate travelers, and even thieves. But each encounter had taught him one thing: patience and observation were more powerful than hasty action. The stranger finally spoke, his voice low and rough, almost a whisper. "Stop looking at me like that," he said, glancing nervously toward the distant tree line. Samuel remained silent, studying him carefully. There was a tremor in the man's tone, a flicker of unease, but also a strange defiance. He shifted again, this time revealing just enough movement to show that something was concealed under the coat. Samuel's eyes narrowed, noting the way the metal glinted faintly when the stranger adjusted his stance. He recognized the sign immediately, a weapon, or at least something that could cause harm. Samuel took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the warm air fill his lungs. He didn't step forward, didn't make a sudden move. Instead, he let the stranger reveal himself further. Years of living on the ranch had taught him the value of patience. Every man had a story, and often the story revealed itself in small actions before any words were spoken. The stranger's story was beginning to show, piece by piece, through nervous glances, subtle shifts in posture, and a tension that seemed to radiate from his very being. The stranger moved closer to the fence, the hem of his coat brushing the dry grass. Samuel noticed the careful, almost calculated steps, each one betraying hesitation. "What do you want?" Samuel finally asked, his voice calm but firm. The stranger paused as if considering his answer. I need some help," he muttered, his voice tight. Samuel tilted his head slightly, not convinced. The words didn't match the nervous energy he sensed. Something about the man's movements, the concealed glint under the coat, and the hesitation in his tone suggested a hidden purpose, something more than a simple request for assistance. Samuel kept his hands free at his sides, ready for anything. The stranger's eyes darted around again, scanning the horizon, as though checking for someone following him. Samuel realized that the man was desperate, trying to hide both fear and intent. The heat of the morning sun pressed down on the open plains, making the air shimmer slightly, but Samuel didn't flinch. He had learned to remain calm under pressure, to let the land and the people around him reveal their truths slowly, without forcing anything. For a moment the stranger stopped entirely. Samuel could see the tension in his shoulders, the subtle tremor in his hands. He adjusted the coat slightly, and the metallic glint shone for a fraction of a second. Samuel's instincts sharpened. He knew that waiting for the stranger to make a mistake was critical. A man hiding a weapon often betrayed himself with the smallest gestures, an edge of a glove, the twitch of a finger, or the catch of light on metal. Samuel watched every detail, knowing that one wrong step could escalate into danger. The stranger finally took a deep breath and spoke again. I can't show it to anyone yet, "You're the only one here," he said, almost pleading. Samuel's gaze remained steady. The plains were open, and yet Samuel had the feeling that time was compressing around them, each second stretching with tension. He stepped slightly closer, careful to maintain a calm, non-threatening posture. "Then take it slow," he replied. "I need to know what you're hiding before we move forward." The man's eyes flickered, and Samuel saw the internal struggle. He was torn between showing what he carried and keeping it concealed. Samuel noticed the fine lines of anxiety etched into his face, the way his fingers brushed against the coat's edge, and the subtle shift in stance that hinted at readiness to flee or fight. The rancher had been in situations before where quick thinking and keen observation were the difference between life and death. He reminded himself now, never rush. Let the other man reveal himself fully. Minutes passed in silence. The stranger shifted uncomfortably, his boots scuffing the dry dirt as he moved slightly from side to side. Samuel remained steady, his eyes scanning the plains behind the man, the horizon ahead, and the uneven terrain beneath their feet. Every detail mattered. In the Wild West, knowledge of your surroundings could save a man's life more than courage alone. Samuel had learned that lesson early, when he had been a boy helping his father drive cattle through rough terrain, facing storms, predators, and men who valued nothing more than their own gain. Finally, the stranger made a move that revealed his secret. He adjusted the coat, and a metallic object partially hidden caught the sunlight more clearly than before. Samuel's instincts flared. It was a small weapon, perhaps a knife, but its presence was enough to demand caution. He didn't lunge, didn't yell. He simply tightened his stance, keeping calm while preparing for action if necessary. Samuel had dealt with dangerous situations before. He knew that panic could escalate things unnecessarily. Steady observation and deliberate movement were his allies. The stranger's voice trembled slightly as he spoke again. I need you to understand. I can't let anyone see this." Samuel nodded slowly, not rushing him but maintaining his watchful gaze. The air seemed to grow heavier, the sun climbing higher, casting long shadows across the plains. Samuel could feel the tension radiating from the stranger, a mix of fear, desperation, and stubbornness. The man was clearly in trouble, but Samuel could not afford to act recklessly. Every motion, every decision had to be measured. Samuel observed the stranger's eyes closely. They darted constantly, scanning, calculating, almost pleading for understanding. He noted the subtle shifts in breathing, the tightness in the jaw, and the twitch of a hand brushing against the hidden object. It was a language of its own, a silent confession of the stranger's intent and anxiety. Samuel had learned to read this language from years of experience on the ranch, dealing with unpredictable men, animals, and the harsh realities of the West. Finally, Samuel took a step closer, his voice calm but firm. "Show me slowly. Don't make sudden movements. I need to see what you're carrying." The stranger hesitated, eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. His hands trembled slightly as he began to lift the coat, revealing just a bit more of the hidden metallic object. Samuel remained motionless, ready to react but not provoking the man unnecessarily. He knew that in moments like these, hesitation could either save or endanger a life. The stranger's breathing grew more rapid, his eyes darting toward the distant hills, then back to Samuel. He seemed to struggle with the decision, caught between fear of revealing the object and the necessity of showing it. Samuel noticed the faint sheen of sweat on his forehead, the tension in the shoulders, and the uneven rhythm of his steps. It was clear that the man had been traveling far, hiding from someone or something, and the secret he carried was important, even dangerous. Time stretched as the stranger slowly began to reveal the object, the sunlight glinting off its surface. Samuel's heart remained steady, his focus absolute. The plains were still, holding their breath with him. He knew that patience, calm observation, and precise action were the keys to handling the situation. Every detail, the flicker of the metal, the man's hesitation, the tension in his stance, fed into the plan Samuel was forming silently in his mind. The stranger finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, don't let anyone see this yet. I need to trust you." Samuel nodded subtly, maintaining eye contact, showing understanding without lowering his guard. The plains seemed vast and endless around them, yet in this small circle of tension, time moved differently. Every sound, the distant lowing of cattle, the rustle of the grass, the soft wind, felt magnified as if the world itself was watching. Samuel's gaze never wavered. He had been in situations before where men carried secrets that could bring trouble, but he had learned to remain calm, patient, and observant. The stranger's story was beginning to unfold, piece by piece, revealing a mixture of desperation, fear, and a hidden burden. Samuel knew that the next moments would be crucial. One wrong move, one sudden gesture could change everything. Finally, the stranger, with a deep sigh, adjusted the coat fully, revealing the metallic object completely for the first time. Samuel's instincts flared, but his body remained calm, poised to react if necessary. The plains around them were quiet once more, as if the world itself was waiting for the next moment. The stranger's secret was out, and Samuel knew the time to act would soon come, but patience would guide his hand. The moment the metallic object was fully revealed, Samuel's sharp eyes took it in immediately. It was small, but its presence was enough to make a man pause, reconsider his next step, and prepare for sudden danger. Samuel remained calm, his posture steady, his gaze unwavering. He didn't speak yet, choosing instead to let the tension settle in the air. The stranger's eyes flickered nervously, and Samuel noticed the rapid shift of emotions, fear, defiance, and something almost desperate. It was clear that the man had carried this secret for a long time, and that he had finally reached a point where he could no longer hide it. Samuel's mind worked quickly but carefully. He had lived through countless situations where a man's life could change in a matter of seconds. He understood that actions had consequences, and hesitation or panic could make a situation worse. The stranger's movements, every subtle twitch, every glance over his shoulder, all told a story. Samuel had learned to read this unspoken language long ago. He adjusted his stance slightly, keeping his body relaxed yet ready. One wrong move now could be catastrophic, but the right move would resolve the tension without unnecessary danger. The stranger's lips quivered and his voice came out in a low, strained whisper. I didn't want to show this to anyone. Not here, not now. But I had no choice. Samuel tilted his head slightly, keeping a calm expression. "Why are you carrying it?" he asked quietly. The plains stretched endlessly around them, but in that moment the two men seemed to occupy a small, tense bubble where time slowed. Samuel's voice was steady, firm, yet non-threatening. He wanted to encourage the stranger to reveal his intentions fully, without forcing a confrontation prematurely. The stranger's hands trembled slightly as he shifted the coat again, making sure the metallic object was secure in his grasp. "It's important," he said. "If anyone else saw it, it could cause trouble, real trouble." Samuel's gaze sharpened. The tension in the stranger's voice and posture confirmed what he had suspected. The man's burden was serious. Samuel had faced men in desperate situations before, but this was different. This was someone who had clearly traveled far, hiding something of value or danger, and now stood exposed in the open plains. Samuel took a deliberate step closer, carefully measuring the distance so that it was safe but close enough to assert his presence. "Show me," he said calmly, "slowly, no sudden moves. I need to understand what I'm dealing with." The stranger hesitated, glancing around as though considering escape or calling for help. The wind whispered through the grass, and the distant lowing of the cattle seemed quieter than usual, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Samuel remained still, his calm presence grounding the situation. Finally, the stranger nodded, though his movements were stiff and reluctant. He lifted the coat just enough to reveal the metallic object more clearly. It was small, precise, and clearly dangerous if misused, though Samuel could see that the man had no intention of harming anyone recklessly. It was clear now that this was not a weapon intended for violence alone, but its concealment suggested a reason for caution. Samuel studied it carefully, noting its size, shape, and the way the man held it protectively. The stranger's voice broke slightly as he spoke again. "You don't understand. If it falls into the wrong hands, people could get hurt. I've carried it for miles trying to find someone I can trust." Samuel nodded slowly. "I understand," he said, "but you need to trust me now. I'm not here to harm you, but you need to be honest, step by step. Show me everything and I'll help." The man's eyes searched Samuel's face, looking for judgment, understanding, or perhaps a hint of betrayal. Seeing only calm resolve, he finally allowed himself to relax slightly, though the tension in his body remained. Samuel noticed the slight easing in the stranger's shoulders and the way his hands were less rigid, though still protective of the object. This was the moment to act wisely. Samuel had always believed that the Wild West required more than courage. It required judgment, patience, and the ability to read people. He could see the story unfolding silently in the stranger's posture, his eyes, and the trembling of his hands. It was clear that the man had faced danger before arriving here, that the weight of responsibility had been pressing on him for miles. The stranger began to speak more freely, his voice trembling but steadying as he continued. "I was given this to protect," he said. "It's not mine, but if it falls into the wrong hands, there will be consequences I can't undo. I've been running, hiding it, trying to find someone I could trust. I didn't know you were here, but I had to try." Samuel listened carefully, absorbing every detail. He could feel the intensity of the situation, the gravity of the stranger's words, and the necessity for clear, deliberate action. Samuel took another step closer, closing the distance slightly but keeping his hands visible. "I see," he said calmly. "And you came here because you believed I could help. That's why you've been so careful, hiding it all this time." The stranger nodded, his eyes glistening with a mixture of relief and worry. "Yes, I didn't know anyone else could be trusted," he admitted. "But now I think you understand." Samuel could sense the fragile trust forming between them, the delicate balance of fear and hope. He had learned long ago that trust was built slowly, and breaking it could turn even a calm situation into chaos. The plains seemed to stretch endlessly around them, but in that small area near the fence, time felt different. Every movement, every glance, every whispered word mattered. Samuel studied the stranger's body language carefully, noting the shifts in posture, the tension in the fingers, and the careful way he held the coat. The metallic object was now fully revealed, and Samuel could see that it required careful handling. One wrong move and either of them could be hurt. Samuel spoke again, his voice low and firm. "We need to move carefully, nothing sudden. I want you to tell me exactly how you've been carrying this and what it's capable of." The stranger hesitated, then nodded. He began to describe, step by step, how he had traveled, where he had hidden, and the importance of keeping the object safe. Samuel listened intently, piecing together the story from the stranger's words and the subtle cues he had observed all morning. The story that unfolded was one of caution, responsibility, and the constant need to remain vigilant. The stranger had carried the object for miles, hiding it from those who would misuse it. He had slept under the stars, forded rivers, and traveled through towns where strangers could not be trusted. Every step had been calculated to avoid detection, and the strain of constant vigilance was evident in his tense posture and weary eyes. Samuel could feel the weight of the man's journey, and it only reinforced the need for careful, deliberate action. Finally, Samuel spoke again. You've done well to keep it safe this long, but the moment has come where it must be handled properly. I need you to relax your grip slightly and let me see it fully. No tricks, no surprises. Just show me everything so we can ensure it's safe." The stranger hesitated for a moment, then slowly allowed the coat to shift, revealing the metallic object fully. Samuel's eyes scanned it carefully, noting the craftsmanship, the small details, and the potential danger. The tension in the air remained, but Samuel's calm presence seemed to steady the stranger. He could feel the shift in energy, the easing of fear just enough to allow cooperation. "Good," Samuel said softly. "Now I know exactly what we're dealing with. You've done the right thing by trusting me, but we need to be careful from here on. One wrong move could ruin everything." The stranger nodded again, his shoulders still tense but showing signs of relief. He had chosen to trust Samuel, and that trust would guide the next steps. Samuel stepped back slightly, giving the man space but keeping the object in view. "We will move slowly, carefully, and deliberately," he said. "No sudden actions. You follow my lead and everything will remain safe. Do you understand?" The stranger swallowed hard, then nodded. "Yes, I understand," he said, a hint of hope in his voice. The tension in the plains remained, but a path forward had been established. Samuel's patience, observation, and calm judgment had turned a potentially dangerous encounter into one that could be managed carefully and safely. In that moment, the Wild West around them seemed to pause. The wind whispered through the grass, the cattle continued grazing in the distance, and the distant hills shimmered under the rising sun. But in this small, tense circle near the fence, two men shared a silent understanding. The stranger had revealed his secret, and Samuel had remained calm and observant, ready to act if necessary. The stage was set for the next step, where decisive action would be required, but only when the time was right. Samuel's mind was already planning the next moves. He knew that patience alone would not be enough. The metallic object was dangerous, and the stranger, though trustworthy now, was still nervous and unsteady. Samuel would need to act with precision, combining calm observation with decisive movement. The moment of truth was approaching, and he could feel it in every shift of the wind, every distant sound of cattle, and every flicker of the stranger's eyes. The Wild West had taught him that life depended on timing, judgment, and the courage to act when the moment demanded. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting harsh shadows across the wide-open plains. Samuel Harlow's eyes never left the stranger. Every movement, every shift in weight, was a signal to the rancher, a silent language of intent and fear. The stranger's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his coat, gripping the metallic object tightly. Samuel could feel the tension radiating from him, a mixture of fear, caution, and desperate hope. This was the moment Samuel had been preparing for, the moment when careful observation had to turn into decisive action. Samuel took a deliberate step forward, keeping his posture calm but ready. The plains seemed to stretch endlessly, but the space between him and the stranger felt charged, heavy with anticipation. He had been patient for long enough. Every glance, every twitch, every anxious movement the stranger had made over the past hours had revealed enough. Samuel's mind worked quickly, calculating angles, timing, and the safest way to disarm the man without causing harm. He knew that one wrong move could escalate the situation instantly. The stranger's eyes widened as he noticed Samuel's deliberate step. His body stiffened and his grip on the metallic object tightened further. "Wait, don't come any closer," he shouted, his voice laced with panic. Samuel stopped, holding up one hand to show he meant no harm, yet his other hand remained free and ready. "I'm not here to hurt you," Samuel said calmly, "but I need to see everything clearly. You've carried this far, hidden it, and that's enough. Let's handle it safely." The stranger's breathing was rapid, uneven, and Samuel realized he had to act before the tension pushed him to a rash decision. Slowly, Samuel moved to the side, keeping the sun at his back so the glare would make it harder for the stranger to see his precise movements. In one fluid motion, honed over years of handling cattle and unpredictable situations on the ranch, he lunged forward with controlled force. He grabbed the edge of the coat, swinging it aside to reveal the metallic object fully. The stranger stumbled back, startled, almost dropping the item. Samuel's quick reflexes ensured the object remained safe, and he used his momentum to gently but firmly pin the stranger against the fence. The stranger's eyes were wide with surprise, and for a moment fear overtook his defiance. Samuel kept his voice steady. "Stay calm, don't move suddenly. You're safe, but I need you to cooperate." The man's hands continued to tremble, and Samuel carefully guided them away from the metallic object, placing it securely on the ground within reach but out of immediate danger. He had acted decisively, but his movements were measured, designed to prevent injury while asserting control. The Wild West had taught him that quick reflexes mattered, but calm judgment saved lives. The stranger struggled briefly, trying to regain his composure, but Samuel's firm grip and calm demeanor kept the situation under control. "Listen to me," Samuel said quietly but with authority. "Everything will be fine if you follow my instructions. No sudden movements, and I promise you won't get hurt." The stranger's eyes flickered between the rancher and the metallic object, then finally settled on Samuel. He nodded, swallowing hard, realizing that resistance would only make matters worse. The relief in that silent acknowledgement was palpable. Samuel took a moment to assess the metallic object. It was small, precise, and clearly valuable or dangerous if mishandled. He picked it up carefully, examining it while keeping one eye on the stranger. "This belongs somewhere safe," Samuel said softly. "Not here, not in the open. We need to make sure it stays protected." The stranger's shoulders relaxed slightly, the first sign of trust forming. He had expected confrontation, perhaps even violence, but Samuel's calm action and quick thinking had turned fear into cautious relief. The plains around them were quiet, save for the occasional rustle of grass in the wind. Samuel placed the metallic object into a secure pouch he carried for emergencies. He had always been prepared for unpredictable situations on the ranch, and now that preparedness paid off. The stranger, still pinned lightly against the fence, let out a long, shaky breath. I didn't know if anyone could be trusted," he admitted, voice low. "I've been running for days, hiding this, hoping to find someone who could help." Samuel nodded, understanding the weight of the man's burden. "You've done well to carry it this far," Samuel said. "But it's safe now. We'll handle it properly. You don't have to carry the fear alone anymore." The stranger's eyes glistened, reflecting a mixture of gratitude and lingering anxiety. Samuel kept his hand near him, ready to respond if anything unexpected happened, but he also allowed a small measure of space to ease tension. The rancher knew that after moments of high stress, giving a man room to breathe was as important as maintaining control. The stranger finally began to relax, though cautiously. I thought I could hide it forever," he said, "but the journey was too long, the roads too open. Someone would have found it eventually. I needed someone who could understand." Samuel nodded. "And now you have someone, but we need to think about the next steps carefully. One wrong move and it could fall into the wrong hands." The stranger's grip on the fence loosened slightly, and he looked at Samuel with a mix of relief and uncertainty. Samuel guided the man away from the fence, keeping a steady hand on his shoulder to maintain control without threatening him. "We'll move somewhere safer," Samuel said. "A place where we can examine this properly, away from the open plains." "Nothing will happen here that shouldn't." The stranger followed hesitantly, still guarded but trusting Samuel's judgment. Every step they took was deliberate, every movement calculated to maintain safety and minimize risk. As they walked toward a small outbuilding near the edge of the ranch, Samuel continued speaking calmly. You've been carrying this a long way. The journey has been hard, but now it's over for a while. We'll keep it secure and figure out the next move carefully. No sudden decisions, no panic, just calm, deliberate action. The stranger's breathing became more even as he absorbed Samuel's words. The reassurance in the rancher's tone helped ease the tension that had gripped him for days. Once inside the outbuilding, Samuel carefully set the metallic object on a sturdy wooden table. He examined it further, noting its small size, precise construction, and potential for danger if mishandled. "This will stay here for now," Samuel said. "I have experience handling delicate situations. Nothing will happen to it, and nothing will happen to you if you follow instructions." The stranger nodded, still nervous but visibly relieved. He leaned against the wall, exhausted from days of travel, hiding, and fear. Samuel studied him for a moment, appreciating the courage it took to carry such a burden across the wild, open plains. "You've been brave," he said. "Not everyone could have done what you did, but bravery without careful thought can be dangerous. That's why patience and observation matter as much as courage." The stranger's eyes softened with gratitude, and a small, relieved smile appeared. He had expected confrontation or violence, but instead, he found calm, careful guidance. The tension in the room began to ease, replaced by cautious relief. Samuel had acted decisively at the right moment, combining speed, judgment, and careful control to disarm a potentially dangerous situation without harm. The stranger's journey had been difficult, filled with fear and uncertainty, but now he could breathe. The plains outside remained vast and open, but within the walls of the outbuilding, safety and calm prevailed. Samuel finally allowed himself a small, measured sigh. He had faced countless challenges on the ranch, from unpredictable cattle to wild storms and encounters with strangers. But moments like these tested not only his skill but his judgment. Acting too soon could have led to disaster. Waiting too long could have been just as dangerous. Timing, patience, and understanding had brought resolution. The stranger, now calmer, spoke softly. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "I thought I'd be alone out there facing whatever came my way, but you acted when it mattered. You saw what I couldn't show anyone else." Samuel shook his head modestly. "No thanks needed. You made the right choice by trusting someone." That's how danger is managed, step by step, carefully, with observation and courage. Hours passed as the two men talked quietly, examining the metallic object and discussing the safest way to ensure it remained protected. Samuel's calm presence and methodical approach had transformed what could have been a dangerous encounter into a controlled, manageable situation. The stranger's relief grew as he realized the rancher's steady hands and keen mind were a powerful combination. By evening, the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the plains with shades of orange and gold. The metallic object was secured safely, and the stranger had settled into a quiet corner of the outbuilding, exhausted but relieved. Samuel looked out over the ranch, the open land stretching endlessly, knowing that today had tested not only his skill but his patience and judgment. He had acted decisively, but with careful thought, ensuring the safety of both the stranger and the object. In the Wild West, moments like these were rare but powerful. A man's courage, patience, and observation could change the outcome of a dangerous situation, saving lives and preventing disaster. Samuel had demonstrated all three, turning fear and uncertainty into calm, deliberate action. The plains were vast and open, but within this small corner of his ranch, safety and resolution now prevailed. The evening sky over the ranch was a canvas of oranges, pinks, and purples, the kind of colors that made the endless plains look like a painting. Samuel Harlow stood near the doorway of the outbuilding, watching the stranger as he finally began to relax. For the first time in days, the man's shoulders were no longer tense. His breathing was even, and the fear that had gripped him seemed to soften under the rancher's calm presence. Samuel had seen countless moments like this in his life, moments when tension and danger gave way to relief and understanding. He knew that today had tested more than just skill. It had tested trust, patience, and judgment. The stranger finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he said. "I've been running for so long, hiding this, afraid of what would happen if anyone found it. I didn't think I'd find someone who would help without judging me or reacting too quickly." Samuel nodded, his expression calm but kind. "You did well to get this far. It's not easy to carry a burden like that across the open plains, through towns, roads, and dangers you can't even predict. But trusting someone when it matters most, that's what changes things." For a long moment, the two men were silent, listening to the wind sweep across the plains and the distant lowing of the cattle. The metallic object rested safely on the wooden table, its presence no longer a source of immediate danger. Samuel could feel the tension in the room gradually lifting, replaced by a quiet sense of resolution. The stranger leaned against the wall, exhausted, but there was a faint smile on his face. He had come to the ranch carrying fear, uncertainty, and a heavy secret, but now he felt the first glimmer of hope. Samuel spoke again, his voice steady and deliberate. "You've done well, but the plains are full of challenges, and life here is never simple. You need to remember that courage alone isn't enough. Observation, patience, and knowing when to act are just as important." The stranger nodded thoughtfully, understanding the lesson that was being quietly shared. He had been relying on his own courage for days, traveling alone, hiding from threats, and carrying a secret that could have caused chaos if mishandled. Samuel's calm guidance had shown him the value of measured action over impulsive decisions. The stranger's eyes shifted toward the open plains visible through the outbuilding doorway. "It's strange," he said. "All my fear and worry, it seems smaller now, even though the object is still here. Your calmness, it makes me realize that maybe I don't have to face everything alone." Samuel smiled faintly. "You never really are alone, even in the Wild West. There's always someone watching, someone ready to act if you take the time to trust them. But trust must be earned carefully, and courage must be balanced with wisdom." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the wooden floor, Samuel took a moment to explain the next steps. "This object needs to be secured properly. We can't leave it here forever, and you shouldn't carry it alone anymore. Together, we'll ensure it's protected. That way, the danger it carries won't threaten anyone again." The stranger's shoulders relaxed even further, a sense of relief washing over him. He had been carrying fear for so long that letting it go, even temporarily, was almost overwhelming. Hours passed as they discussed plans to secure the metallic object. Samuel shared his knowledge of the surrounding area, pointing out safe paths, hidden locations, and trustworthy contacts who could help ensure that it remained protected. The stranger listened intently, realizing that this was more than just guidance. It was a lesson in careful planning, responsibility, and the importance of wise decisions. He had learned that courage alone could not ensure safety. It had to be combined with thought, observation, and strategic action. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky, each one shining like a tiny beacon across the vast expanse of the plains. Samuel looked up, then back at the stranger. "Life on the plains is like this sky," he said quietly. "Vast, sometimes intimidating, but full of paths and possibilities if you know where to look." Today was about more than just keeping something safe. It was about learning to trust, observing carefully, and knowing when to act. The stranger nodded slowly, feeling the truth in the rancher's words. The night grew colder, and Samuel built a small fire outside the outbuilding. The flames flickered warmly, casting a soft glow over the two men and the surrounding ranch. They sat quietly for a moment, the crackling fire breaking the silence of the night. Samuel finally spoke. "You've learned a hard lesson today, but it's one that will stay with you. Courage, patience, and careful observation, they matter more than you realize. The Wild West teaches it harshly, but the lesson is worth it." The stranger's voice was softer now, almost reflective. "I've always thought courage was about facing danger head-on. But today, I see that sometimes courage is knowing when to wait, when to observe, and when to act carefully. You've shown me that." Samuel nodded, satisfied that the lesson had been understood. He had seen many travelers and strangers come and go across his ranch, but few had left with the kind of wisdom that came from facing danger under guidance and learning the importance of timing and trust. As the fire burned steadily, Samuel and the stranger spoke about life on the ranch, the challenges of the plains, and the lessons learned from long journeys. The stranger shared stories of travel, fear, and hope, and Samuel shared his own experiences of patience, careful planning, and decisive action. The night passed quietly, filled with stories, reflection, and a sense of peace that had been absent from the stranger's journey for so long. By the time the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, painting the plains in soft hues of gold and pink, the metallic object had been safely secured in a hidden compartment within Samuel's outbuilding. The stranger felt a weight lifted from his shoulders, knowing that the danger he had carried for days was now in capable hands. Samuel had not only ensured the object's safety, but had also imparted a lesson that the stranger would carry for the rest of his life. That courage must be paired with patience, observation, and careful action. The stranger prepared to leave, his journey resuming but with a newfound sense of confidence and understanding. He looked back at Samuel, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything. I don't think I would have made it without your help." Samuel tipped his hat, a small, quiet gesture of respect. "Take care and remember what you've learned. Life on the plains is full of surprises, but careful thought and courage will see you through." As the stranger disappeared into the distance, Samuel returned to his ranch house, the plains stretching endlessly around him. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had acted decisively when it mattered most, protecting both a man and a dangerous object without causing harm. The lessons of the day were clear. Patience, observation, and timing could make the difference between disaster and safety. The Wild West was unpredictable, but with wisdom and careful action, a man could face it and prevail. Samuel stood on the porch, looking out at the vast landscape, the morning sun casting warm light across the land. The day ahead would bring new tasks, as it always did, feeding the cattle, checking fences, and maintaining the ranch. But he knew that the lessons of the past hours would remain with him. Life on the plains was unpredictable, full of challenges and unexpected encounters, but it was also full of opportunity, growth, and the chance to make the right choice when it mattered most. He thought about the stranger and the journey that had brought him to the ranch. The man had faced fear, uncertainty, and a heavy burden, and had come through stronger, wiser, and more aware of the importance of patience and careful action. Samuel knew that this encounter would leave a lasting impression, not just on the stranger but on himself as well. The plains had tested them both, and both had learned something valuable about courage, trust, and timing. By midday, the ranch returned to its usual rhythm. Cattle grazed peacefully, the wind swept across the plains, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Samuel moved through his daily tasks with quiet efficiency, his mind calm, yet alert to the lessons learned. The Wild West was a place of challenges, but it was also a place of growth, opportunity, and resilience. Every encounter, every decision, and every moment of patience and observation mattered. As the day ended and the sun dipped toward the horizon once more, Samuel stood on the porch, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. The stranger's journey, the metallic object, and the tense moments on the plains had all been a reminder of the delicate balance between courage and caution. In the Wild West, a man's life could depend on his ability to wait, observe, and act decisively when the moment was right. Samuel had faced that test, and he had passed. The plains stretched endlessly, vast and wild, but within that vastness, Samuel knew that careful thought, patience, and courage could turn even the most dangerous moments into lessons of wisdom and strength. The stranger had left with safety and understanding, and Samuel returned to his ranch, ready for whatever the Wild West might bring next. The day had ended, but its lessons would remain forever, a testament to the power of observation, patience, and decisive action in a world as unpredictable and challenging as the open plains.